David. I'm going to just introduce this and set the scene by thanking everyone for joining us. Hope everyone's staying safe, everyone's family is staying safe. We're really enjoying connecting with all of you in this way at this time. So we've made it a regular thing. And David's done a lot of these kind of presentations in the past month or two. And so he's ready to take any questions you have. So if you do have questions throughout the presentation, pop those down in the chat box below or the Q&A box below. If you're watching with us on Facebook, feel free to leave a comment and we will be sure to get to those as well. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to David.
Thanks, Caitlin. My name is David Zelasko. I'm a solar consultant with Third Sun Solar, working mostly on the residential side. There we go. So yeah, we'll talk about our agenda today. And as Caitlin mentioned, we've done several different webinars. We've done a backup solar and storage on self-consumption mode and resiliency. We've done Solar 101, how it works in Ohio, net metering, and also financing solar in Ohio. So check out our YouTube page. You can see about all the different webinars we've done. Today we're going to focus about emergency backup. So I'll give you a brief introduction to who Third Sun Solar is, go into some of the solar and battery backup options that we offer, highlight a little bit about the Tesla Powerwall, and then go into backup generators as well, and how you can get an estimate and what type of information we require or discuss with you for an estimate. And then, as Caitlin said, if you have questions during this whole time, send them out as you think of them, and then we can get to them at the end of the presentation. So again, we're Third Sun Solar. We've been doing solar for 20 years now. This is our 20th anniversary in June. So keep updated with us. Some exciting things happening on our ends and that we're going to share with you all in June. But this is our headquarters in Southeast Ohio, in Athens, Ohio. And you can see our crews and our employees. And one thing that we pride ourselves on is doing everything in-house. So a construction company first with great expertise on staff. And we're headquartered in Southeast Ohio, but we also cover the whole state as well as parts of Indiana. So we'll be able to help you with that. Also, we are a certified B Corporation, so we put people and planet before profits, and also a woman-owned business with over 1,000 clean energy installations, and we're licensed electrical and general contractors. If you're not familiar, a B Corporation are for-profit companies that are evaluated on a regular basis regarding environmental practices, also role in the community, and how you treat your employees. And so every few years we get audited on these factors. And so it's something that we're very proud of, and a lot of our customers appreciate it as well and see it in our work. Sorry. All right. So to get started, I'd like to go over just a general grid-tied solar system again without batteries. So when we're putting panels on the roof, that energy is being collected by the daylight and the sunlight and going into an inverter. And this inverter is converting the sun's DC energy to AC, and it's getting distributed throughout your loads. And so there will be times where you're producing more than the home needs, and then that excess power will go back into, through a bidirectional meter, back into your grid, into the utility company, and depending on your utility, they can give you a reduced bill or a credit on your bill. And so that process is called net metering. And I did a whole video a few weeks ago on net metering. So if you want to go check out our YouTube page, a lot more detailed information on that. But starting here is a good way to explain how solar works in a power outage. So if you lose power at your home and the grid is down, it's important to note without battery, just like in this example, your solar per National Electric Code has to automatically turn off. So it's important to note that even during the daylight and sun shining, and there's a grid outage in your neighborhood, your solar cannot work unless there's a battery present. And so that is National Electric Code. And when we are done installing on your house, the inspectors will come and look and simulate that power outage to make sure that the inverter is shutting down when there's no AC power coming in. And so the main reason for this is that you don't backfeed the grid, you don't damage any utility property, or hurt any workers on the line. So now we'll go into how battery backup options and solar work. So now once you add in a battery, and we've been moving towards the lithium-ion batteries, and I'll get into some of the options that we have. But here is the Tesla Powerwall, which we're a certified installer for. But once you add a battery to a grid-tied solar system, then your solar is now allowed to produce, but it's charging the battery. And so in this example, we can set it up two ways, essentially. And here is having batteries, and most of the time there'll be 2 or 3 batteries that will tie into your whole house, all your breakers. And so what is going on is that the solar is providing energy into your panels. If there's more solar than the home needs, instead of going to the grid, it goes and fills in this battery. Now, let's simulate a power outage. So the power goes out, the solar now is charging that battery, and that battery is feeding loads in this main panel. And here you'll see this device called the gateway. So this is the brains of the Tesla Powerwall. And this is basically talking to these two, or the battery and the gateway are communicating. And so when the grid goes down, the gateway knows that, okay, the battery now needs to move into backup mode. On this side here, this would be regarding critical loads. And so again, the gateway, recognizing that there's a power outage, but this situation, we're just backing up these specific loads. So nothing in this main panel will be backed up, but certain devices like refrigerator, lights, outlets, maybe a well pump or a sump pump, those can be set up into a critical loads panel where the battery will then feed energy to those specific loads. And so that is how you can run off solar and battery during the power outage. And we will set you up with that critical loads panel. So we are licensed electricians. So this is something that we can do. And I'll talk later on how we determine which loads to work with. So here are 2 of our main lithium-ion battery options. The LG Chem, so LG Electronics, has a product called LG Chem, and they have batteries that are pretty comparable to Tesla. And these factors are kind of what we look at and how we determine sizing for a customer. So the LG Chem has a 9.8 kilowatt hour capacity. So how much energy can it store? Where the Tesla has a 13.5 kilowatt hour capacity. They both have around a 5,000 watt or 5 kilowatt continuous power discharge. So how much energy can they push out of their batteries at once? And then also critical loads versus whole house. So LG Chem is limited to certain loads based on their breaker size. So their max breaker size would be 25 amps or below, whereas Tesla is 30 amps or below. And if you add 2 Tesla Powerwalls, now you have the max breaker size 60 amps or below. If you add 3, 90 amps or below, and so on and so forth. So because of that, you can achieve more of a whole house backup that way. Whereas if you add 2 LG Chem batteries, your still max breaker size is around 25 amps. So that's a big distinction. So if someone wants to just do a specific loads, small critical loads panel, maybe the LG Chem may be something that they'd be interested in. Now, when tying in solar, this brand of LG batteries needs a specific inverter. So we use an inverter called Solar Edge. Solar Edge has a brand called Store Edge. And so some of our customers, in anticipation of adding an LG Chem, installed the Store Edge when they did their installation so that we can come in and it's a little bit more plug and play in adding that LG Chem. But unfortunately, LG Chem this brand of battery can only use a Store Edge, whereas Tesla can be installed into a Store Edge inverter, but also different inverter types. So also with the SMA or N-phase or various other Solar Edge devices. So because of that, we feel that Tesla is the better option out there, has more capacity, and has a lot more functionality. So I'm going to get a little bit more into Tesla during a power outage. So when customers are reaching out asking for recommendations on if they need a Powerwall or how many, and we kind of want to look at what they wanted to achieve. And so if anyone's out there, we do a free consultation if you sign up. All we do is have a conversation with you, and we want to get a good idea of what loads you're looking to back up. And so I can send this to you as a calculator where you can play with the number of Powerwalls here, so you can change the number here. And then also clicking on the blue, making each icon blue shows, okay, I have my toaster, coffee, taking a shower, charging my phone, my laptop, other electronic devices in the house, and then also lights, refrigerator, and Wi-Fi. So some people deem these are a good piece of essential loads. And so if we had 2 Powerwalls, then this calculator is showing that you'd probably be able to live off that battery for about 3 days with just these loads. And then if you start clicking on the calculator, different loads, like you want to charge your car, charge your AC, those have big energy draws. So that could significantly reduce this time, but it gives you a good idea of, okay, how many batteries do I need and what can it achieve? Now, this number here is also going to depend on your solar. So how much solar did you install? Where's your solar located? How much irradiance and how much access to the sun do you have? That's going to be a big factor in this number here. So we can work with you on that and kind of get a good idea of how your solar will match up with the battery. Another great function of the Tesla Powerwall, and again, we did another webinar that dived deeper into the self-consumption mode, which you can see here. This is showing the energy usage in the house, the solar kicking on, and charging the battery, then sending excess power back to the grid. And when the solar starts reducing production in the evening, that battery is starting to cover these loads. So it's a great tool for self-consumption, but in a power outage, you can set this app, this is through the Tesla Powerwall app, to be reserved for a power outage. And so you can set it up where you always want a certain percent of the battery full for backup power mode. You can set it up so I want 100% of my battery ready in case the power goes out. And that's all controllable through the Tesla Power app. Another cool feature on that, the gateway we're talking about, deemed the brains of the operations here, has a cool feature if you have it set up where it can actually get meteorology data and know a storm is coming and can automatically reserve some power for an anticipated power outage. So it's very cool tech, and we're pretty happy, and so is our customers with it. So that was solar and battery, and we'll go into generators. So we are a Kohler certified generator installer. And so we primarily do generators that have automatic transfer switches. And just like the battery, we get a good understanding of if you use a whole house or if you want to back up critical loads. And so what's important here is that you must have a fuel source on the property. So with solar and battery, your fuel source is sunlight and daylight. Where on a generator, it's important to either have a propane tank on your property or you have a natural gas hookup. And so we can hook up the generators to either one of those fuel sources. And so a generator is just going to power your home in the event of an outage. And if you experience majority of your power outages in the winter, maybe a generator would be a great option because it's a little bit more reliable than some of the low sun winter months and some of the overcast we might get in Ohio. Few of our customers will actually do a battery and generator. And so it's important to know how that's installed. There's some engineering behind it, but that is doable as well so that you have multiple sources of backup power. And there's a definite advantage of having solar and storage over a generator because once you have the infrastructure in place to collect the sun's energy, essentially that's free fuel over the lifetime of the system. Whereas the generator, you have to make sure your propane tank is full, purchasing that propane. And if you have a natural gas hookup, well, now you're pulling a lot more gas from the gas company, and that can have some costs over time. And some cons on the generator, they can be noisy. If a power outage happens on your street and your street's full of generators, that can be loud and maybe like everyone's cutting their grass at the same time. So it can have some noise impacts, and also it puts out emissions. You're burning fossil fuels to power your home, and there's emissions that can be detrimental to the health of you and people around you, and also the environment. But what we do in our estimates, we'll take a look at, is generator the right fit for you, or is a solar plus battery? So when we do our estimates, I mentioned before, we want to take a look at what do you want to back up? So what are you deeming essential? So do you want specific critical loads, or can we back up your whole house with batteries? And so this is an example of a customer of ours, and this is their breaker box. And so here, this will label the loads that each breaker is powering, and then the amp size of each of those breakers. So as I mentioned before, when we're working with Powerwalls, 30 amps or less, so any breaker that is below 30 amps, we can tie into one Powerwall. And then any breaker 60 amps or less, we can tie into two Powerwalls. And now also we want to understand, okay, which one of these, what are these loads and how do they perform? How do they take energy? So are they big motorized loads that are running constantly and throughout the day that's going to, discharge your battery quicker? Or are they smaller loads that don't have a big pool and that you could use over a longer duration? So this customer ended up with 2 batteries, even though what he deems critical are going to be lower than 30 amps. And the reason being is because of the well pump and some other things, he wants to make sure if the outage happens, he's going to last longer than if he only had one Powerwall. And so we look at, okay, these are 20 amps, 15 amps, 20 amps, and we take a look at this with you and saying, okay, you want some of these too, and we can take these breakers and put them in their own critical loads panel. Now, let's assume for a second that this garage sub panel was either not there or was on a 60 amp breaker. So that would then allow us to actually back up all of these loads with 2 Powerwalls. And again, the duration will matter based on those loads, but that'll allow us to just tie into this main breaker, and the battery will feed in all of these loads. And some customers can either go and say, okay, well, it's a power outage, I want some of my essentials, let me turn off my my geothermal. Maybe it's the springtime and I don't really need to heat the house or run the AC. I can turn some of these things off to make my battery last longer. So again, solar storage is not one size fits all, but it's important that you take a deep dive and get a good idea of the engineering behind all of this, so that you have the expectations of how your battery will perform. So, once you're interested, you can go to this link here and sign up. And again, we look at electric bills, and then if you're adding a backup power source, taking a look and understanding what loads you want backed up, and also what size breaker they are on. And after a quick initial call, we can get you with an initial estimate, and then get you on our schedule and move into the permitting process. A friendly reminder that the end of this year, your system has to be installed by the end of 2020 to get a 26% federal tax credit. If your system is installed in 2021, it's 22%. And then if it's installed in 2022, you have a 0% tax credit. And so when doing solar and battery backup, that will qualify for this tax credit when they're done together. Solar and a generator, only the solar will be qualified, where a generator can't take the tax credit. So this is a federal tax credit, and once you get an estimate from us, it's 26% of the cost, and that you can, and then we would suggest that you take it to a tax professional to get a good idea of how that works for you. We're solar and storage experts, but not on the tax side. So again, that can be one size, that can be customized to each person. So make sure you understand how that's going to affect you. All right, so that does it for the presentation. Happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Great. Thanks so much, David. And I know for everyone watching, this is a lot of, some of the information can be kind of complicated or requires customization for your particular situation. So I'm going to go ahead and put David's contact information into the chat feature. So if you have any direct questions about your particular situation that you would like to ask David, if you want to work with him, I'll leave the email there in the case that you have a customized kind of question for him. And we'll go ahead at this time and start taking questions from the folks that are joining us. You can use the Q&A box or the chat feature, whichever you prefer, for those of us in Zoom. And for those of us watching on Facebook, feel free to drop a message and we'll get to those questions as well. And a couple of questions I had, David, kind of, high level. I know you work with customers that are solar customers or just folks in general every day who are interested in getting a battery system. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit? What are their typical motivations? Like what is the motivation of a typical person that is interested in solar or interested in battery backup?
Yeah, majority of the people are motivated by idea of self-reliance and also emergency backup like we discussed today. And it's cool that the batteries can provide both of that. So you have that self-consumption mode where you can use your battery every day, even if the grid wasn't down. And that gives people more self-reliance that they're using their solar more at the house than sending that extra power back to the utility company. And then the peace of mind of using clean energy, solar energy, to back up the house in the event of a power outage. So, those are the big reasons, mostly just because, if you have solar, as we mentioned before, that system without a battery, you can't take advantage of your panels per National Electric Code. So a lot of people want to be able to use their panels even during an outage.
Great, thanks. We haven't seen any questions come in, so I'll give it a little bit more time. A question that came to my mind, another one, do many folks who do go solar with batteries, do they remain tied to the grid?
Yeah, so the answer is how we set them up. Yes, majority of the time, you are still grid tied. So the grid, if your battery is depleted, then the grid will come back and empower your home until your solar starts charging your battery again. So that's the majority of how these systems work. But we have done off-grid systems. They can be more complicated. We've taken a lot of like camping, hunting cabins and stuff like that. Smaller places we can do backup. But that's something that we talk to you about and see which direction you want to go.
Great. We have a question from Kevin who asks, what are some of the fuel-fired generators' max kilowatt output and max amp allowed compared to battery backup limits of 5 kW and 25 amps?
Yeah, so there's generators have a wide range. There's a lot of different styles there. The amps I'm not quite familiar with, but I mean, people have 20 kilowatt generators, down to 5 kilowatt. So there is quite a wide range. And if your main goal is reliable backup power, especially in the winter time, the generator is going to probably be a good match for you. And the sizes depend on how much energy that you use. So generators can get pretty big, and we see a lot of all-electric homes using some large generators, higher than 20 kilowatts or higher.
Great. A question here from Jim. What is the typical cost of 2 Tesla battery installations? He's a third son customer, 16 panels about 2.5 years ago. And the average yearly production is about 3.8 megawatt hours for the last 2 years.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks for coming back and checking out this webinar. The cost of the power walls and the batteries are going to determine on if you want a critical loads panel or not. So we can add a critical loads panel, which could increase, maybe around $1,000 or so. But usually we do 2 power walls fully installed at around could range around 23 to 25,000 before any tax incentives. When we do 1 power wall, that usually can start anywhere from 12 to 15,000. And so when you install that first power wall, you're adding the gateway. And you're setting up other infrastructure like critical loads panels. So once that infrastructure is in place, it's easier to add more power walls to it, thus giving you more of an economies of scale over time. But we'll also be happy to take a look and see if 2 power walls is what you need, and kind of get a good idea of what you're looking to back up and how you're looking to use the batteries.
Great. And I'll let everyone know, I have dropped David's email here into the chat. I misspelled it the first time, so just send it again. That's the actual one, dzelasko@thirdsunsolar.com. So check out the second one that I sent through. Any more questions from anyone else, please feel free to send them through now. But for now, I will tell you all, for those of us joining us on Zoom, we will send out a post webinar survey, as well as a copy of this video to the email address that you registered for this webinar through. And for those of us watching both on Zoom and on Facebook, check out our YouTube channel. There's a lot of great content that, David's had the pleasure of developing over the past couple months as we're, in quarantine and separated from each other physically, but still able to connect in this cool new way. So please check out those YouTube videos that David has done in the past, a lot over net metering. What else have you done? Solar 101, a general overview, some on the tax incentives.
Yeah, and we covered financing too. So, multiple ways to finance your solar project. And then our partner also that we do zero down financing with can also finance the batteries. So you can do a solar plus storage loan with them, or you can just do a storage loan with them. So there's a lot of good options. And yeah, I recommend checking out that financing webinar as well.
Great. All right, we had another question come through. Someone asking, have we done a webinar on REC? No, but that is on our list. So REC is is one of our panel manufacturers who we think are great and really applaud, and we will be doing a how to choose the correct solar panel webinar, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, that would be a great one. REC can also mean renewable energy certificates, so that may be a good one as well. That was a more prominent incentive through the state of Ohio a few years ago, but that may be a good thing to inform people on in the state of SRECs now.
I think that Jim, that is what he was talking about. So yes,
okay.
Yeah, an update on residential energy credits, solar. I think of them as SRECs, solar residential energy credits, but yeah.
Well, now we have 2 good webinar ideas.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Jim. All right, well, no more questions, so we'll go ahead and sign off. If you see this video on our YouTube page in the future, feel free to post a comment and we'll get back to you.
Great.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
Yeah, take care.